for more on today's anniversary. We've crossed live now to SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko, who is in Ekurhuleni for us. Samkele, good morning. So 30 years on, and we're still hearing about calls for an inquest from the SACP. What can we expect today? What's on today's agenda at the commemoration?
Well, Sakina, what we do know is that the ANC and South Africa's Deputy President Paul Shipokosa Mashatile will be addressing the 30th anniversary commemoration of the assassination of the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. Chris Hani was also the Chief of Staff of Umkhonto Wesizwe. The Deputy President Paul Mashatile will speak on the lives and times of the General Secretary of the SACP, Chris Hani, particularly knowing the current contemporary politics that South Africa is in, the current turbulence that the tripartite alliance is in, and particularly with the release from prison of Janusz Walush. You heard those stark and harsh words coming from the widow of Chris Hani, Dimbo Hani, speaking on how this country is finished, particularly knowing that the Constitutional Court, in her words, did not speak with her family, consult her family, how they feel with the release of Janusz Walush after that Constitutional Court ruling that the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamula, should place Janusz Walush on that particular parole 30 years on after the assassination of the Chief of Staff of Umkhonto Wesizwe, the former General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, which many people have criticized, saying that the SACP, since the passing of its former General Secretary Chris Hani, the SACP was never the same again. But I'm going to bring in Mr. Madala Masuku, who is the first Deputy General Secretary of the SACP. Mr. Masuku, the essence of calling for an inquest into the assassination of the former Chief of Staff and your former General Secretary, Chris Martin Tembisile Hani, Uthunyan.
Thank you, Samkele, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to to the watchers and listeners of SABC. We are calling for an inquest because we believe that Janusz Walush was not supposed to be out of jail. Because one, they didn't disclose fully on what has actually happened. You can't have a weapon, a killer weapon, that was stolen from, whether it was stolen or that was coming from the army, and you don't follow up what is it that has happened about it. Was it stolen or it was issued by someone else? So all those are question marks that are still lingering. And we also believe as the Communist Party that Janusz Walush was not only with the Belows. It's clear that there was just so many people that were involved in this. So we can't just limit it to hatred of Janusz Walush.
Mr. Masuku, why now? Why now, 30 years on? You've had successive general secretaries. You've had the late Gwala. You've had Charles Nkakula. You've had Mpepeto Blade Nzimande leading the SACP for a number of years as general secretary. Now you have Solima Paila. Why now, 30 years on, after his assassination, that you call for an inquest? Why was it not done earlier on so that the family and the members of the South African Communist Party and the members of Umkhonto Wesizwe, where he was the Chief of Staff, could get closure?
It's because there were other avenues that were supposed to be followed. Firstly, the TRC itself was another avenue, and it had its processes. The fact that it rejected to accept his version, it meant that if once it's rejected, like any other, there are other processes that are following in terms of your criminal procedure. Yes, he was led to stay in jail, but we needed to have actually gone through this process. The other one was that there were other additional avenues that we're looking at in terms of taking this matter forward. And at the end, we felt that the inquest will be the best at this stage.
Are you inspired by the inquest into the death of Ahmed Timol, that you are now looking for an inquest into the assassination of your General Secretary Chris Hani? And if you were to find a can of worms that your own leaders, your own comrades were involved in his assassination, what then?
Well, also the breakthrough on Comrade Ahmed Timor, it has also motivated more us more, because that success actually showed that that process is actually a good one. It's the one that could actually take us somewhere else. So if we find out that, you see, we want to know who killed, and a killer is a killer. Whether I'm wearing red or I'm wearing emblazoned by a star of the Communist Party, doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. You are a killer. If I'm a killer, I'm a killer.
Mr. Masuku, I'm just going to come to the modern day South Africa. Look around this memorial park where the remains of the former Treasurer General of the ANC, Thomas Titus Nkobi, lay next to Chris Hani. Chris Hani here on the right hand side. There are many other liberation icons who are remembered and buried here.
Yeah.
But this memorial park, the grass is not cut. Many cemeteries in South Africa are going through the same catastrophe. Grass not cut, cemeteries not maintained, no vegetation done. You go to the remains of the former Secretary General of the ANC, which is Dumanokwe in Lusaka. The gravesite is a sham. Is the liberation movement and the Tripartite Alliance failing to properly commemorate struggle icons, particularly Thunyani, Chris Hani, whom his assassination effectively on that day when former President Nelson Mandela, then President of the ANC, had to address the nation and effectively take over as the President of the country when he addressed the nation from the SABC studios?
Samkele, I must accept that in 1990, when we came in 1994 and the democratic government was put in place, and then we had municipalities in the democratic governance in municipalities, we kind of relaxed as a movement and also as a communist party. And we believe that now we've got everything, we've got our own democracy, our government is going to carry out, will marshal us and lead us in terms of areas of service delivery. But 30 years up to now, we have realized that it doesn't work. So that is why in the last Congress, the Communist Party has adopted a program, and it was reconfirmed in the Augmented Central Committee, that we are going to be taking, we are going to be focusing on ourselves, taking responsibility for ensuring that services of our people are actually carried out. We're going to mobilize society, work with them to address a number of things, crime and issues of service delivery, closing of potholes, and ensuring that even cemeteries are actually attended to. And that is going to actually be showing what that is a reflection of values of what liberation movements were all about.
How are you going to do that, Mr. Masuku, when the SACP can't even fill up a hall? The SACP, with its former General Secretary Thunyani Chris Hani, used to fill up stadiums. It was not a mass-based organization, but it had a mass following. People loved and aspired and wanted to listen to Thunyani. When you speak about the SACP today, they say it's yellow communists. It's people only looking out for themselves with just one cabinet post. You look at Tula Singlisi, you look at Blade Nzimande, you look at a number of former SACP leaders in cushy, lavish jobs in government.
Well, let me start by just saying that the SACP, it is on the ground. The only approach that we've been doing is that haven't been doing a lot of campaigns, like visible on the street campaigns. But in terms of our branches, they're actually on the ground working with the people. Yes, our numbers are still around 300,000 members. But those members are actually influencing values at a local level. With regard to occupation of positions in government, whether it's in the municipality or in the national government, those positions are actually entitled for citizens of South Africa, and part of those that are in are deployed in their as a right as members of the ANC or within members of the party within the alliance. They occupy those positions on the basis of that. And that is why we are saying now we need to reconfigure the ANC. Part of the reconfiguration is that the Communist Party must have a direct accountability line with those who have been deployed in the state, because we have of the recognition of the new values that we're actually rekindling, that we want to have of serving.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samkele Maseko, who is the first Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. Proceedings will get underway at about 10 o'clock this morning with that keynote address coming from the Deputy President of the African National Congress and Deputy President of South Africa, Paul Mashatile. And also, we will hear from the widow of the late General Secretary of the SACP and Chief of Staff of Umkhonto Wesizwe, Chris Hani's widow, Dimpho Hani, who has been very vocal about the state of affairs in the country, particularly speaking on how former Minister of Tourism Lindiwe Sisulu is vindicated on the role that the judiciary plays in this country after Janusz Walush, who pulled the trigger on the late General Secretary of the SACP, Chris Hani, and that fatal killing on that day, where you saw those visuals of Tokyo Sexwale and a number of other ANC leaders around the family when they heard the news of the assassination of Chris Hani.